Hi folks, in this video we're going to be looking at preview mode and how you can give your users, the end users who are going to use the CMS to edit your website, how you can give them a better experience to see what they're editing before they have to publish it, and to sort of show the whole workflow right through from how you develop components to make sure that they have a good preview experience, and sort of what's going on overall with Next.js. In Next.js, it's called draft mode, and we'll show you how that's implemented in the code we've been working on in this series. Let's dive in. The project we've been working on so far, we deployed the first day to Vercel. So when we actually go to the pages section of Agility, our headless CMS, we can use the preview function to preview what we're doing ahead of time. There's also a couple other things we can do here. We can copy the preview link and we can preview in a new tab. Now, the CMS needs to tell the website when it wants to preview, and we want to make sure that that's a secure experience. So I'm just going to copy the preview link and paste it into my address bar here. And you can see we've got the path to the page I'm trying to preview and a whole bunch of other stuff, including this preview key query string parameter here. So what that's going to do is it's going to send a secure a token to the website to say this user wants to preview, and we can validate that now and kick them into preview mode. If we're just going to view the site in live mode, let's go and check out that, we're not going to send anything there. And this website is the starter project here, actually includes this bar at the top to really give us some clarity of what we're looking at here. So we can see right here, we're viewing the published content, we're not in preview mode. Let's actually just preview in a new tab. Now we can see we're previewing the latest changes. This actually works in conjunction with Agility's Web Studio product. So if I could just click preview, it's going to flip me over into Web Studio, into the whole different section where I'm in preview mode now. And what Web Studio does is it goes even one step further and it hides the preview bar, but I know that I'm in preview because I'm on this tab of Web Studio. I can flip over to here to view live content. So you can kind of go back and forth, and I can even use this inline commenting mode, which I'm not going to get into right now. But you can see as I hover over the different components, these have been decorated for me. So they're actually, outlining a little edit button over each of the fields, so I can actually click into and edit that. So this is a really nice experience for your editing team to be able to find where things are and where they're able to actually manage the different pieces of the content. And then if they want to fix something like a typo, it'll be in there automatically, and we don't have to even do anything to see more changes as it comes through. So that's a really nice experience for folks to have even outside of preview. So we have live editing, which is as I type, I see changes. I have preview, which allows me to preview either in Web Studio or in a new tab. And I could share that preview link and send it to someone if I wanted to. If I wanted to let them see, an unpublished version of the site. And then I actually have the live mode. Let's dig into the code now to see how that's actually implemented inside Next.js. So let's open up Visual Studio Code and take a look at what's going on here. So I'm going to close all my tabs. I'm actually running this. Let's look at it running. So I'm going to run this in Chrome so I don't get confused between what's deployed and what's not. So this is running localhost, and by default in development mode, we're actually going to always show the preview mode. So development mode kind of equals preview mode. If I did want to basically do the same thing as live mode, to simulate live mode, I would do a yarn build, which I've already done, so we don't have to wait for that. But then I would run yarn start. So this is actually going to run, my build didn't finish. So I'm going to run a yarn build right now. It shouldn't take very long. And then when that finishes, I can actually run yarn start to simulate running in production mode. So let's go ahead and do that. Run yarn start now. And this should work. And it's the same URL. So it's localhost 3000. And now I'm viewing published content. Okay. And so any of the changes that I have made that I haven't published, I won't see yet. And I can simulate preview mode. This site actually has the ability to automatically switch into preview mode, which I don't recommend building into a normal site, but it's really nice to show that that capability and that functionality as a sort of an option as a part of a demo project that's right here. So you can see that header component has not been published on this page yet. Okay, let's look at how that's actually implemented. And where it's implemented is in a special file for Next.js called middleware. So what happens is middleware intercepts every single request coming through into Next.js. And so what we can do is we can actually check for this agility preview key. So the headless CMS gives us some query strings to tell us about what it wants to do. So if the user has clicked preview and now we want to actually get that, that search parameter, that query string, we can grab the locale as well, and we're going to grab the slug from as the path name, okay? So what we're going to actually do, because we don't want to do a lot of processing in the middleware.ts, because remember, this is actually going to run on the edge, depending on where it's deployed. So if I deploy on Netlify, Vercel, or a few other providers, it'll actually run this code out on the CDN. So I don't want to do a lot of work there. This has to be really, really fast. And actually you are limited to what you can do. You can't do like file system operations and things like that here. So what I'm going to do is actually rewrite this response. So I'm not going to change the URL that's in the address bar. I'm not going to do a redirect. What I'm going to do is basically change the URL that the Next.js origin server, so like the main page router, is going to see. And I'm actually going to switch it to an API route. So there's an API route under /API/preview, and then we're going to forward the locale, the content ID, if they were previewing a particular content ID, like if I was previewing a blog post or something like that. I'm going to send in the slug, and I'm going to send in the preview key that I can validate it. So let's actually now look at this /preview API route handler. So under /API, I have /preview, and there will be route.ts, okay? If you open up a lot of preview routes, you're going to have a lot of route.ts files, but you'll notice that once you start opening multiple of them, let's open this one open, I'll double click on that one, it actually shows you where they are. So that's a little trick in Visual Studio Code to kind of help you know where you are if you have a whole lot of routes that are open. Okay, so right now we're not using the locale parameter because the site is only single locale. We'll actually get into that in another video, but we're going to grab the preview key, and what we're going to do is actually use this validate preview that's coming from the Next.js SDK. We're going to use this to validate whether that's an actual valid preview. And if it's not, we're going to, if we actually get an error, we're actually going to output an error and tell the folks, hey, this is not a valid preview key. All right. So we're not going to let just anybody preview this site. It has to come from the CMS. Now, if we do have a content ID, then we're going to go and get that dynamic page URL. So if it was a dynamic page, we're going to go grab that. And then here we go. This is where we turn on draft mode. So draft mode is coming from the Next.js SDK from their headers package. And we're going to call enable on that, all right? So that turns on essentially what Next.js calls draft mode, and it indicates that we want to use the preview key when we're actually working with our data, okay? And then we're now going to redirect with a 307 back to the URL where we want it to get to. So that's why when we preview from agility, let's go from here, we can actually open in a new preview as well. So we have this here, we're going to open in a new preview window, and you'll see that it redirects away from that preview key. You can kind of see that really quick, where you can see the preview key and then it goes away, right? And just out of interest, if you deploy to multiple locations, so I have actually deployed to Vercel twice. I can't remember exactly why I did that, but you can now choose between those. So if you had like a staging, a UAT, and a production deployment of this site, you could have those all show up in Web Studio here and have folks choose between them to see if different deployments of code are going to operate differently with both preview and published content. So there's a sort of alignment there between a deployment and how your content is going to look. All right, so let's look at what actually happens now when we're actually getting content. All right, so let's go back to our actual page. All right, so remember the page, so this is the default page, and this just renders the slug. So this is the index page, but it renders the slug page. Right, so we're going to call get agility page. Let's look at that method right there. That actually is going to call get agility page props from the Next.js SDK, and it knows whether we're in preview mode because it's the Next.js SDK and it actually uses that draft mode. So this automatically is going to get the copy of this page that's in preview mode or published mode. All right, but then when we're getting content for our components, which is more of the work that we do on a day-to-day basis, let's look at that. We're going to go back to our team listing component that we had earlier, and we're going to go to the top. we actually called get content item with this, right? So that's where we're actually going to do some work, right? And so what this does, there's a bunch of CMS, there's a CMS folder in the lib folder that has a bunch of CMS content access methods here. And you can see here that our SDK, the Get Agility SDK, is going to, we're going to go and get a handle on that. And it knows that we're in preview mode. So we're going to just update our fetch config here and pass that in. But the get content item from the Agility SDK, it knows that we're in preview mode. So we don't have to actually do anything with Agility to change that, how all that works, because our Get Agility SDK method that's right here looks at draft mode. So that's how it knows what's going on. So we have draft mode that turns on preview mode, okay? So if we're in development mode, so we're checking two things. Are we in development mode for our node environment? So did we run yarn dev or npm run dev? Or are we in draft mode? So there's two things that we're checking here. If you wanted development mode to actually work differently, you would just change this this line of code right here, right? So now the API key that we're going to use is based on whether we want to use preview or not. So if we're using preview, we're going to use the preview key from Agility. Otherwise, we're going to use the fetch key. If I jump back to Agility for a second, let's actually go into the settings and show you where those came from. So under the API keys section, we have two keys. One for fetch. So the fetch key is going to give you publish content, and then the preview key is going to give you preview content. So we have both of those keys that we have that are available here, and you can actually do your own key management as well, and you can let those keys expire. But we're going to pull those keys from our environment variables here. And then when we call get API from the Agility, the base Agility SDK for TypeScript, we're going to pass in the API key and whether we're in preview mode or not. So that's how all of that works. So it means that all of our calls to things like get content item will work. Now there's some other stuff going on here for caching that I'm not going to go into just yet, but if you looked at how Next.js works with caching, we can actually do object caching. So this is all set up for you there, but just know that there is absolutely no caching happening when you're in preview mode. Caching only happens when you are using the fetch version of the SDK. And that's how preview works with Headless CMS and Next.js. But wait, there's more. One other thing that I showed initially was that live editing experience. So what that is using is decorated components. So we're going to take a look now at how we can decorate our components to give a great live editing experience for folks that are working with our content. So we're going to jump back into some code and show you how that works. So if you remember when we were in Web Studio, we had this editing experience where I have little edit sort of hover action that happens and then I can click into fields to edit them, right? So this is a really nice experience. How does that get set up in our code? Let's go and take a look at the most basic of component. This is our header component that we've got here. Let's look at that. So in our components listing, we've got this heading component, and you can see that it's got some decorations with some attributes here. So the data agility component equals content ID. So the content ID we grabbed from our get content item call. So that is going to show us this hover for the component itself. So that's the wrapper for the component. If I wanted to put that on a different element, I could move this if I wanted to have it a little bit more indented potentially on there. So where you put that decorator is where that border will show up, okay? Now we've got the ability to have the field itself be decorated as well. So let's look at that. So we've got this data agility field equals title. So what we're telling Preview Center here, or the preview window, is that this is an agility field and its name is title. And that will allow that hover action to be set up. So there's an SDK that got added. This is the Web Studio SDK that got added onto this that's used in our main layout, which is right here. So we've got an extra script that gets added right down here. So this is using the latest version of the Web Studio SDK from Agility that sort of runs only when we're in Web Studio, only when we're in this iframe will that actually work. Okay, so it's pretty easy to work with components that do this. But we added a new component, if you'll remember. So we actually, if I switch to the team page you'll notice that we added this team listing component. Well, I'd love to be able to edit these two things right here and have those work really well. Let's go ahead and add that into our team listing component. So we're going to decorate first with the data agility component. So let's do that first. So we're going to do that right here. Nice. So then we've got two fields that I'd like to set up. One is the, oh, we didn't decorate this properly. Here we go. We have to actually add some code here. I made a mistake in the last video. Don't tell anyone. Here we go. So we're going to use fields dot content, or sorry, fields, pardon me, dot heading, and fields dot content here. All right, so let's actually just open that in dev mode to make sure that's working. Here we go. Let's go to the team page. And we'll refresh that. Here we go. So now we have, this is updated content. So we're actually pulling the right content now. So we've got the component decorated. Now we need to decorate the fields themselves. So because I can't remember anything very easily, we're going to grab data agility field equals. All right, so I just use other components as ways to help myself with this. And I'm just going to use the same field name as heading. And then this one's going to be data agility field equals content. So now what we're going to do is build that, deploy it, and we'll see what that looks like in Web Studio. That is going to take me a second, but I'll just go through the steps that happens. So I'm going to do a build here to make sure that works. And then assuming that works, I'm actually going to push directly into my main branch. That's going to build into Vercel. So this is decorated component. So the build worked. We're going to push that in. That's going to take a second. I'll see you back in a second after our build finishes in Vercel. All right, so you can see that build finished, took about 43 seconds. That's finished in Vercel. So if I close that and go back into the Web Studio, I can just click refresh here now, and it's going to show me the preview mode with our new build. And you can see I've got this new experience where I can click into my component or click directly into a field inside that component to change it. So I can say our team is great. And now I have that awesome live editing experience that I wanted for my users. So I've got a great live editing experience. We can do preview and we can do published content. And it really makes a great experience for the team that you're going to hand this site off to. Thanks for watching.